Time for a bit of refactoring, and we're going to introduce presenters into our API, which will allow us to present data out in a very consistent format. And if we want to update that across our entire API, if we had lots of other endpoints, it would be really easy to do. We wouldn't have to come back here and say, oh, I want this to be something else, and I want this to be something else, or I want to add something else here. So let's look at doing that now. So inside of Shorty, we're going to create a new folder called presenters. And inside of here, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it base presenter. And that's a PHP file. And we're going to namespace this obviously under Shorty presenters, makes sense. And we'll give this the class name base presenter. So any presenters that we create are going to extend base presenter in case we need any functionality in here that we might want to expose to them subclasses, but we're only going to include one method in there for now. So I'm creating a new file now, and this is going to be our error presenter. So it's going to specifically deal with outputting errors. So let's create error presenter.php. Let's give this a namespace, Shorty presenters, class is error presenter, and this is going to be responsible, like I said, for outputting errors. So let's look at doing that just now. So the two errors that we've got, what do we actually have being returned? Well, we have an array in here, which is being JSON encoded, so it can be output here and shown properly. In this case, it's not an error, but if we were to get rid of this, we see an error, a URL is required. So let's tackle this one first, and then we can just easily reuse the functionality down here. So inside of our error presenter then, what kind of thing do we want to do? We want to be able to pass in a code and a message, and we want that to spit out a nice presented error for us. So we need a constructor here, because we need to create a new instance of this presenter to be able to present to the user. And we're going to take a code and a message. So up here we have two properties, code and message. And here we're just going to set this to there. So message like so. So now we need to look at using the toString magic method, because essentially all we want to do here is we want to say app response write new error presenter, pass in a code, pass in a message. ToString basically will return a string when you echo or output somehow your object that you've already created. So we need to encode our output to a JSON string. So we need to add this functionality to our base presenter, and then we need to extend our base presenter from our error presenter. So let's extend base presenter, and inside of base presenter, let's create a new encode output method. So all this is going to do is just return JSON encode anything we pass into this. Might seem a bit silly, but if you ever needed to update this, it would be a lot easier just to come and update this one method rather than all of the presenters that you're currently using. So it might seem a little bit silly to just do the same thing here, but it will make it easier in future, hopefully. So inside of our error presenter then, we have our toString magic method. Like I said, when we output this object that we're going to be instantiating, this error presenter class, this will just spit us out some text. And this text is going to be a JSON string, so we're going to return this encode output, which is that method that we've just created here. And in here, we're going to pass in the same thing that we passed in here, so this basically. So let's cut this, or copy this and paste it in just here, and that's all we need to do. So the error is going to be a specific code. We pass this into this when we eventually instantiate it. So we just say this code. We did the same with the message as well. So we just say this message, like so. And that's it. And that is pretty much it. We can now actually update our file, our generation file here to actually use this. So we get rid of all this now, and all we need to do is say new error presenter 1000, and then we can pass in a URL is required, and that's it. I'm going to pull this down on this line just for clarity so it looks a little bit neater. So that is a massive improvement over outputting all that rubbish. Now we have this presenter to deal with that. But we need to import this as per anything else. So we need to say use shorty presenters error presenter, like so. So let's check if this works in exactly the same way. When I don't enter a URL and I hit that, we get exactly the same response back. It's just a lot easier now. This is easier to remember. So all we need to do here is go ahead and get rid of this. Paste this in here, change the error code and say a valid URL is required. And once again, if we were to just type in a load of rubbish in here, we get the same output. So that's it for our error presenters. We now have this class that we can use, output wherever we want, and it will give us what we need. If we need to change this at all, the structure of this, we can do. Simple. So now we're going to move on to our link presenters. So anything to do with the links in our application. So we do exactly the same thing. We create a new presenter. So that's link presenter.php. And again, we namespace this under shorty presenters. And we call this link presenter. We extend the base presenter that we created. And again, we have a constructor for when we instantiate this. All this is going to pass through though is a link object, and we can type hint this using link, and we just need to say use shorty models links. The reason we do this is if we don't have a link passed through to here, we know that it's not a suitable value to pass into our constructor, so this will throw an error within PHP. So all we need to do now is say this link equals link and create a protected property up here. And now we can do exactly the same thing. We can say public function, and we can use our toString magic method, and we really just do the same as we did with the error presenter here. So we're encoding the output, which is that method on our base presenter. So we just say this, or return rather, this encode output, and then in here we just pass in what we want. So we can copy and paste this from here, which is just this. We do need to make quite a few changes to this, so in fact let's just grab this part of it. So yeah, we do need to make quite a few changes to this. So payload URL is no longer an option because we are not passing the payload through to this. So we're just going to have to settle for outputting this link URL. Remember, the link we pass through to here is going to be this link here. So we've got all the information we need. So we're outputting the URL. Now we're outputting this link code, and we'll deal with the URL in just a minute. So I'm going to comment that out for now. We need to do something slightly different here than saying app, because app isn't available in this scope. So let's take a look at how this works. So we go back to generate. We can get rid of all of that. We can use our link presenter, and we can say in here, new link presenter, pass in that link. So just to recap, if you're confused, we're creating a new link presenter, which, remember, when we echo it out anywhere or output it anywhere, we are using the toString method to return a string. Encode output is returning a string because it's taking an array and it is JSON encoding it, which takes an array or an object and outputs it to a string. And then we're grabbing, because we passed in the link, we're grabbing the link URL and the link code. So we now should see, if we generate a genuine URL, So let's say google.com, I don't think we've got. If I just click that. So we've got a syntax error in generate on line 32. Let's just check this out. There we go. So we don't obviously need that trailing semicolon. And the reason this has happened is because google.com now already exists, because we just saw that error. So let's get rid of both of these. And let's just generate this again. Oh, of course. So at this point, we're looking at if the link already does exist. So let me send that through once more. And we get a server error. So let's check this out. Okay, so that must be... Okay, so this is an interesting error. Good for debugging and learning about why this has happened. So argument 1 passed to link presenter's construct method must be an instance of shorty presenter's link. Now that's wrong, because we want it to be an instance of shorty models link. And all that means is that within the link presenter, I misimported. I didn't import this link object properly. I wrote links, which you probably noticed. So if I return that to link, when I hit this, it should work. So let's go back to JSON text view. And here we see the presenter in action giving us that response back, but without the URL. So let's deal with the problem of the URL now, because again, app isn't in the scope of this class. So we need to do something slightly differently. And all we need to do here is say slim get instance and then access the config method. All this will do is it will return the current instance of your application. So we actually need to go ahead and import slim now, because obviously this doesn't exist under our presenter's namespace. So let's say use slim. And now we should update this here to this link code. So remember, we're just appending our base URL and then a /, then the code. And this should all work properly now. So let's click that again, and there we go. So we get the URL back as expected. So all that's left to do now is just update this response here by getting rid of all of that duplicated code, pasting that in there, changing this to new link, and let's start all over again. Why not? So let's get rid of both of these. And let's go back to our API, our REST client. Let's send through google.com. It's created a new record. There it is. When we send this again, we're returning the same record. So we're not creating a duplicate, and so on and so forth. So we can play around with this all day. So although we'd already created our generate endpoint, it's good to tidy things up using things like presenters, so we can just easily reuse this functionality elsewhere in our app, or just within the same file here. You can see it's tidied it up a little bit more. So that's it. We've managed to generate URLs via an API endpoint using our REST client to send that data through.